just what is an accessory dwelling unit? It's a smaller independent residential dwelling on the same lot as a single-family home or duplex. Sometimes people call these granny flats or mother-in-law suite. And then in St. Louis, they are really part of our historic fabric. People refer to them in many cases as carriage houses. They can be detached, meaning they are kind of not connected to the primary structure. They can be detached from the primary structure but above a garage. They can be attached to the primary structure. They come in all shapes and sizes. And these uses bring a lot of value to the community. And I know this committee is very aware of ADUs and their role in facilitating multi-generational living and supporting extended families. They do by kind of creating a new type of housing option, but also just by expanding the housing supply, contribute to attainability of housing. For property owners that build an ADU on their property, they provide an option for new rental income that can help with maintenance and or generational wealth building. And they, I think, do play a role in tornado recovery and long-term rebuilding by giving people more options for how to provide housing and how to live in their neighborhoods and neighborhoods impacted by the tornado. The issue with our current regulation stems from the fact that, this is kind of, even though it's a traditional use, it is not one recognized by our 1950 zoning code. And without a definition, they're treated just as another single-family dwelling, and they meet none of the area or kind of dimensional standards for a single dwelling. And so we see them very frequently at the Board of Adjustment requesting a variance for approval. This can add time, costs. Some people we've spoken to who have been interested in doing this, just like knowing that the time would be involved, just simply don't even opt to pursue the idea because of the hassle. So at the end of the day, fewer ADUs are likely being constructed in the city, and those that are being constructed at greater expense due to the fees, but also just due to the lost time in the Board of Adjustment process. So the proposed approach and the approach reflected in the regulations in Board Bill 60 is to reduce barriers and the need for any special approval to facilitate the construction of ADUs and to facilitate kind of all the benefits they can and do bring to our community.
I mean, that would essentially turn a single family parcel into a multifamily dwelling district if you have someone that builds one of these and then they just start using it as rental property and renting it out to anyone and everyone, especially where you have some areas of the city where a lot of the single family parcels aren't owner occupied parcels, they're investor owned parcels. So I see that that could probably be somewhat problematic in areas like that.
Well, similar to how kind of tenure or whether something's owner occupied or renter occupied is not restricted for the primary structure, the regulations don't propose restricting that for the ADU. Under these regulations, they could be rented out, and that is, I think, has some benefits as well as trade-offs. I think
I am opposed to this bill right now for one simple reason, and I think it's because in some areas we're going to see a real proliferation of short-term rental with people building ADUs strictly to use as short-term rentals, and that's been such a concern in my neighborhood and neighborhoods similar to mine, and I addressed this with the sponsor, and it just doesn't seem like it was feasible to carve out short-term rentals in this, but that's the only issue I have with it, and I thank her for her work, but I'll be a no on it today.
Question I do hear, and I know you have been, kind of against the short-term rentals for a while. If a ward was building housing, say about 30 or 40 homes, out of those 40 homes, 10 of them could be short-term rentals as well, right?
Right now, since there's a temporary restraining order on the ordinance regulating short-term rentals, 40 of them could be short-term rentals.
So would you support in the future any alderperson's like bill for development when it comes to housing until we figure out with the short-term rental? Because I mean, if in your argument, anything we build in the city could be a short-term rental, which you would not support.
I think this is particularly something that what I'm taking into consideration here is density in single-family A areas where we're already seeing complaints regarding short-term rentals increasing the density, and that's my real issue here.
Okay, I could just see a situation where homes are being built in single-family A area, you know, maybe in the 11th or the 10th or the 12th, where people come in and say, we're going to build 30, 40 homes, you know, and in your analogy of it, that out of those 40 or 30, any of them would be or could be short-term rentals. So I'm just curious of like, you know, where's the line of, you know, development that you wouldn't support because of potential of short-term rentals coming to bring more housing? I think we need more housing in the city of St. Louis. We need more people to come here in population. So I get your concern, but I think at the same time that could go for just development in any ward when it comes to outside of ADUs, just housing in general.
Sure, and I think if you were to look at my record, you'd see that I've virtually 100% of the time opposed any incentives on single-family houses.